Imagine someone hands you a piece of sharp rock and tells you to grind it through the top of your best friend's head, hour by hour, while he is awake. You are not the first person to do this. People have been doing it for at least 9,000 years. They did it on every inhabited continent. And here is the strangest part. Most of the patients survived. This is trepanation, and once you understand how it actually worked, the line between ancient medicine and modern medicine starts to disappear. Start with the skull. There is a man named Otto who walked around eastern France about 7,000 years ago. We do not know his real name, of course. We named him Otto. We have his skull. Both sides of his head have been opened up. 2 clean round holes. The edges of both holes are rounded smooth from new bone growth. Both surgeries healed. Otto walked around for years afterward. He is the earliest patient whose case we can prove in detail, and his skull is sitting in a museum in Ensisheim, France. Now, look wider. Archaeologists have found over 1,500 trepan skulls in the archaeological record. France, Ukraine, Russia, North Africa, China, Peru, the Pacific Islands. Skulls drilled, scraped, cut, and chipped open by people using flint, obsidian, and later bronze. The hole is always intentional. You can tell because the cut marks are too clean and too round to be a wound or a fracture, and the evidence that the patient survived is unmistakable. When bone is cut and the person dies right away, the edges stay sharp. When the person lives, the bone remodels. It softens at the edges, it rounds over, it begins to fill back in. So when archaeologists find a skull with a clean round hole and rounded healed edges, they know exactly what happened. Someone opened that skull while the person was alive. And the person walked away from the operating table, so why were they doing it? The honest answer is that for a long time, we did not know. Early archaeologists in the 1800s, particularly Paul Broca, assumed it was ritual. A trepan skull is shocking to look at, and it is easy to imagine some shaman cutting it open to release evil spirits, treat madness, or let demons out. Some cases probably were exactly that. But by the time you really study the patient population, a different pattern shows up. Most trepan skulls show evidence of head trauma right next to the hole, a fracture line, a depression in the bone. Something hit them hard. The hole was drilled directly over the injury. So in most cases, this was not magic. It was practical. Here's what happens when you take a hard blow to the head. The brain swells. The skull, being a closed box of bone, has nowhere to give. The swelling itself becomes the thing that kills you. Cutting a hole releases the pressure. You can save the patient. This is exactly what modern neurosurgeons do for the same condition. They call it a decompressive craniotomy. Ancient trepanation, modern craniotomy. Same operation, same goal, 9,000 years apart. Some patients were probably also treated for severe migraines, seizures, or chronic infections. The procedure seemed to help, and sometimes the surgeon would carefully replace a small piece of skull or insert a thin piece of polished bone to keep dust and dirt out of the wound. The skull piece would heal in place over time. Now here is the part that ought to break your brain. In 2018, a neurosurgeon named David Kushner at the University of Miami published a survey of trepan skulls from ancient Peru. He worked with John Verano, an anthropologist who had spent decades documenting Peruvian trepanation. They measured survival the same way archaeologists always measure it, by looking at the bone-healing margins around each hole. Smooth and rounded means the patient lived. Sharp and unfinished means the patient died on the table. What Kushner and Verano found was almost impossible to believe. In skulls from the earliest period of Peruvian trepanation, around 400 BC, the survival rate was about 40%. By the late Inca period, around 1400 CE, the survival rate had climbed to over 80%. 80% of patients receiving brain surgery, with no anesthesia, with stone tools. By comparison, during the American Civil War, surgeons trying to perform the same kind of operation with steel scalpels in field hospitals killed about half of their patients. The Inca with chunks of obsidian were beating the Union Army with steel, by a lot. So how? How did the Inca get so good? The answer is the same answer for any surgeon. They practiced. They had specialists. They taught apprentices. They got better. The earliest Peruvian surgeons used a drilling technique that punched all the way through the skull. The later surgeons switched to a scraping technique that wore the bone away gradually. They left the inner membrane of the skull, the dura mater, completely intact. They cleaned the wound. They monitored for infection. They were not lucky. They were skilled professionals working in an unbroken tradition that lasted more than 1,000 years. If you ever walk into a modern operating room during a craniotomy, you will see a surgeon mark a clean section of the skull. You will see them carefully remove that bone. You will see them do their work on the brain underneath. And if the patient survives, the bone flap goes back in. The scalp closes over it. The body heals around it. 9,000 years separates that scene from a man sitting in a Mesolithic village with a piece of flint pressed against his head. The tools changed, the anesthesia changed, germ theory came along, antibiotics came along. But the underlying logic of the operation, that the skull is a closed box and the brain inside it sometimes needs more room, has never changed. Once humans figured out that cutting a hole could keep a person from dying, the operation never went away. It was done in Mesolithic Europe. It was done in dynastic Egypt. It was done in the highland Andes. It was done in feudal Japan. It was done in 19th-century French hospitals. And it is being done somewhere on Earth right now, probably in the next hour or two. The trepanation hole and the craniotomy flap are the same hole. We did not invent neurosurgery. We refined what people in the Stone Age were already doing. Think about what that continuity actually means. A skill that started with somebody in a Mesolithic camp watching a friend die from a head injury and thinking, what if I just made a hole? That insight was so good, so right, that it survived continents and millennia. It survived language extinction. It survived empires collapsing. It survived the rise of writing and the fall of pagan religion and the discovery of bacteria. Someone in every century kept doing it because it kept working. So picture that skull again. The one in the case in Ensisheim, the man we called Otto. 2 holes punched clean through the top of his head, edges rounded smooth from healed bone. The man who carried that skull walked around for years with the operation done to him. He lived a normal life. He probably loved someone. He probably argued about food. He probably worried about his kids. And then he died, eventually, of something completely unrelated, like everyone else does. His surgeon was good. The medicine worked. And he is one of 1,500 we have, which means he is one of countless thousands we never found. Every time you assume the people who came before you were less clever, less observant, less competent than you are probably wrong about it. The Stone Age was full of specialists who would have looked at modern medicine and said, yes, we know how this works. We have been doing it. We just had less to work with. The strange thing about being human is that someone, somewhere, has already figured it out. We are not the first ones to be smart. We are just the latest.